I moved to Maple Street because I was tired of being a stranger in places that never noticed when you left. I wanted a road where the grocery clerk knew if you preferred paper or plastic, and the morning bus driver gave a nod you could measure your day by. I got the nods. I got the clerk. What I didn't expect was a dog named Duke, a neighbor named Everett, and a yard that turned into proof that first impressions know nothing about the truth. The first week I unpacked to the sound of cicadas and the soft thrum of porch fans and a dog digging like a metronome keeping time next door. He was medium-sized, brown and white with alert ears and a chest that rose like a bellows whenever he stared at the ground as if the earth might answer if he breathed right. He started in my lawn the second day, paused exactly where the soil changed color near the roots of the maple that split the line between our lots. "Hey!" I shouted, as if a dog would respect jurisdiction. Duke looked up, dirt beard and all, and barked once, not like a threat but like a word. I clapped, he paused, then trotted back through a gap in the fence with the offended dignity of a man told to stop reading at the good part. I filled the hole and met Everett the same morning, 60s, wiry strong, neat plaid, jaw like a locked box. He didn't apologize. "Dogs dig," he said, tone flat as a rule book, and when I told him people mind, he shrugged the county's oldest shrug. That was our beginning, me with a shovel, him with a shrug, Duke with a job none of us understood yet. By week 2 the politeness veneer had peeled. Duke's holes multiplied, so did my warnings. I stapled wire to the fence, he tunneled. I sprinkled citrus, he sneezed and kept going. I asked more firmly, Everett got firmer back. "Fix your fence," I said. "Fix your attitude," he said. We were a duet of the wrong kind, two tired people guarding the small order they thought they still controlled. The third Saturday, it escalated. Duke was elbow-deep in earth when I came out with a broom and my temper. Everett came off his porch so fast his mug hit the rail and clattered like a warning bell. I told him his dog was tearing up my yard. He told me to stop spraying a harmless animal like it was a burglar. Somewhere in there I said that if he cared he'd keep Duke leashed until he learned. Somewhere in there he said a chain on Duke would be a chain on what was left of his house. We stood too close in the wet summer light, two strangers with everything and nothing in common. He said, almost to himself, "You don't know what that dog remembers," and turned away like a man who'd tried more words than the morning could carry. After that, it got mean in the small-town way, tight smiles and withheld waves, and my garbage can pushed 1 extra inch onto my side. My complaint to the town clerk about fences filed under neighbor dispute, a stack where paperwork goes to nap. The hardware counter heard our versions like a courtroom. Half the street said I was right because property is property. The other half said Everett was right because grief is a property too, and sometimes it annexes land it doesn't own. I hadn't earned that sentence yet. I only had the holes. And Duke. Every dawn he appeared and dug in the same crescent of soil by the maple, nose low, tail slow, the focus of a search party. I tried watching him without anger, tried to see the pattern in his body. He'd paw twice, pause, sniff, shift 6 inches, and start again, not random, but systematic. The 4th Tuesday I found 3 new hollows, small, tidy, almost careful. Something in me softened against my will. Destruction doesn't tidy its edges. That afternoon the mail carrier, a woman named Rosa with a gossip's grin and a minister's discretion, said, "Don't mind Everett when he's short. He's been living between storms." When I asked what that meant, she tapped her chest where a ring might have been and said, "Helen," like the weather report. His wife, she added when I didn't pretend to know. Librarian. Wrote notes that got people through winters. He was gone a while after she passed. Came back with a quieter face and a dog who wouldn't let him sit too long. I wanted that to excuse him. I also wanted my yard back. Both can be true. The blow-up came 2 days later when Duke tunneled under the fence again and Everett found me in the grass with a length of wire and a temper. "I'm calling animal control next time," I said. He went still in a way that made the air itch. "You do that," he said, voice low, "and I'll tell them to take me with him, because I'm the one who can't stop him doing what she asked." "Who?" I demanded, past patience. "My wife," he said, and then, like he was daring me to argue with the past, "Helen." He walked away, shoulders squared against history. That night the sky opened. Thunder stitched the horizon, and the gutter sang its old tin lullaby. I stood at the window and watched Duke lie down in the rain where he'd been digging, not flinching at thunder, not seeking shelter, just pressed to the ground like he was listening through it. That image lodged under my ribs. Morning made me practical again. I woke to the sound of scraping, grabbed a shovel with the righteousness of someone who decided that solving a mystery counts as concession, and went to the maple. The soil there was looser than the rest, aerated in a dog's geometry. At 4 inches, the shovel struck something that clicked like a lid. At 6, I could see it, a small tin, rusted at the seams, the kind that lived under beds once upon a time and kept secrets with a metal's stubborn loyalty. Duke sat beside me, close enough to count as partner, but not so close I could mistake this for play. I levered it out, wiped mud on my jeans, and felt a prickle along my arms that wasn't fear so much as reverence. I took it inside because the kitchen was the only place that felt like a room big enough for other people's stories. The top creaked when it opened, slow and ceremonial. Inside, a bundle of envelopes tied with a ribbon faded into the color of old sky. The top one, in a hand that pressed hard on the downstrokes, read, "To my love, read when you wake." I sat. The kettle hissed, and I let it. I slid the first letter free and unfolded a winter a stranger had saved. "It's been 14 days since the accident," it said. "You twitch your fingers when I tell you Duke has been rude to the mailman. I take it as agreement. Dr. Mason says to keep talking. So I will. You always said my voice could find you in a crowd. I'm going to pretend this is the largest crowd in the world and talk louder." My chest went tight. The next letter, a spring after, "The rosemary is stubborn, like someone I know. I planted it by the steps so if you come back on a Tuesday when I'm not expecting you, the first breath you take will taste like every Sunday we ever had. Summer, Rosa brought peaches from her cousin. I made a pie and burned it because I forgot to set the timer and I was telling you about the time Duke got his head stuck in the fence again. He yelped, I laughed, the smoke alarm sang. I hung the pie on the porch for the flies. Duke did not judge. Autumn, they say 1 year is an answer. It feels like a riddle. I keep writing because if I stop I'll have to admit I'm speaking to a room. The last envelope had no date. The first line changed the temperature of the room. You woke up, it said simply. You will open your eyes in a world where I am no longer the person you hand your keys to. I hope they put rosemary somewhere a breath can find it. I hope someone reads you the jokes you pretend not to laugh at. I hope Duke refuses to let you stay in any chair too long. I love you, which is not an answer so much as a compass. If you find these, put them back for a while. You'll be tempted to live inside them. Don't. Take them out when the wind is wrong and you need to remember that you are, in fact, the man the sky once clapped for. I pressed the paper to my mouth without meaning to. There are letters that pull a sound out of you don't recognize. Duke rested his chin on my knee and made that small dog noise that is halfway between question and reassurance. Okay, I said, to him, to her, to the ache of not being there when someone returns. Okay. I carried the tin to Everett's porch like a person carrying a folded flag. He opened the door before I knocked as if grief had left the hinges too alert. He saw the tin, then me, then Duke. He sat down on the top step because standing would have made him lie by accident. His hands trembled when he took the tin, steadied when he touched the ribbon. He didn't ask where I found it. He knew. He opened the letter that said, read when you wake, read a line, closed his eyes, opened them again, and read the same line like a man trying to fix a date in the present tense. She wrote every day, he said finally, voice gone to gravel. I woke up 3 days after she died. I woke up into quiet and a dog who wouldn't let me stay in bed. I thought silence was the only language left. He laid the letters in his lap, patted the step beside him. I sat. Duke wedged himself between our boots, as if to remind us of jurisdiction, his. Everett swallowed and started to talk, and the street tilted into his past. We were 22 when she decided I wasn't allowed to keep my hair like a broom, he said. She cut it with kitchen scissors and told me if I argued I could sleep in the shed. We married with pie instead of cake because we didn't know anyone who baked cake that wasn't dry. She shelved books for 30 years and found 600 dropped grocery lists used as bookmarks. She kept them and started buying the things for people quietly. One lady thought angels were shopping. It was just Helen and a stubborn sedan. He smiled in the direction of a memory like you turn your head to catch a radio station. We argued like the stove and the kettle, he went on. Hot and loud, but we cooked meals between us. She said I was a good man who acted like I needed permission to be. I said she was a kind woman who acted like kindness was a job. We were both right. He traced the edge of the tin. The accident was nobody's story to tell but ours. A drunk at 3 on a Tuesday. We were on County D with Peaches in the back seat and a dog hair in my eye. I woke up 2 months later to the sound of the air machine and someone telling me it was September. She wrote those months down so they wouldn't steal the only thing time shouldn't be allowed to steal. He tapped the letters. She wrote me a map back. His breath hitched. I didn't wake in time to say thank you. He didn't cry like a flood. He cried like a leak a careful man had been tightening with a wrench that finally slipped. I didn't touch him, not because he didn't deserve it, but because touch and grief is a chemical. You have to get the ratio right or it burns. Duke leaned harder against both of us and sighed the sigh of a foreman whose crew has finally paused to read the plan. Word got around like it does. By evening, Rosa was on the porch passing a pie to Everett without stepping over the threshold, because some doorways are altars for a while. We read 2 letters that night, and he told me about the morning he woke up, the clean, wrong light of a hospital noon, a nurse saying you're very loved, and how he understood the past tense was not a mistake and still couldn't tolerate the grammar of it. I came home to Duke, he said. He would not let me sit. If I sat, he brought me the leash. If I threw the leash, he found it. If I hid the leash, he brought me my shoes. If I hid the shoes, he barked until Rosa came, and I had to pretend I hadn't hid my own shoes. He smiled with the left corner of his mouth in a way that suggested Helen might be watching for accuracy. He started digging where she'd been that last week with the trowel, he added. I filled it. He dug again. I was angry at him for not letting the dirt be dirt. I didn't think to ask what he'd been told. You mean by her? I said, daring a pronoun. Who else tells anyone in this house what to do, he said, and we both snorted tears. The conflict with me didn't vanish with the tin. Habits stand up slow. I still bristled when Duke crossed the line. He still bristled when I bristled. But now the bristle met a story and softened. The town noticed. The woman at the diner stopped pausing her pen when I ordered and called me Han without the trial period. Buddy from 2 doors down brought over a proper fence stretcher and said, let's do this right, which is an apology if you speak small town. Everett began to linger at the fence line, not to supervise the dog, but to attempt conversation like a man testing a leg after a break. He told me about Helen's rosemary theory, that nobody should take trash to the curb without brushing something fragrant. He told me about their worst argument, the one about selling the boat, which wasn't about the boat. It was about him needing to keep something broken because fixing it would mean admitting there was nothing else left to repair. She won, he said. I sold it and learned you can't keep grief in the garage under a tarp and call it a project. I told him about David, my husband with the kind hands, and the early night heart that decided not to finish a Tuesday, and how I moved because the city kept yelling my name wrong. He listened without recipe, without fixing. We started trading letters for stories. He'd bring out one of Helen's and I'd bring one of mine, the kind you only tell when someone is paying attention, like they might have to retell it later to a person who loves you. The street changed shape around us. Disputes that had auditioned for the town clerk's desk evaporated. The rumor that I was a complainer from the city died the way rumors do when someone's dog starts sleeping on your porch like he's been assigned night detail. And then came the afternoon that closed the circle. A thunderstorm rolled in with the kind of authority that makes you cancel plans you didn't have. Everett lit a candle in a glass jar and put it on the porch rail and said out loud, for you, not whispering like a man caught in superstition, but stating it like policy. Duke paced by the maple once, twice, stopped where he'd once dug and sat, watchful but calm. I stood inside with the last letter in my hands, the undated one with the compass line, and read it again as the house hummed with rain. When the thunder clapped and the windows quivered, Duke didn't flinch. Everett didn't either. Something that had been held in place by attention we didn't know we were giving finally let go. The next morning, I found a small paper packet on my step. On the front, Everett had written, in a careful hand, for beginnings. Inside, rosemary seed, a photocopy of Helen's first letter, and a note in Everett's voice that had learned a gentler grammar. "You were right about fences needing mending," it said. I was right about dogs remembering. She was right about most things. Plant this where you fill the last hole and let Duke lie there when he wants. He knows the difference between guarding and keeping. I planted the rosemary where the soil had been churned and smoothed by months of pause and my stubbornness. Duke came over, sniffed, sneezed, and lay beside it with that particular responsibility dogs wear when you finally understand them. Everett leaned on the fence and told me the last piece without drama. When I woke, he said, I was angry at her for leaving me to do the quiet parts alone. Then I found out later she'd set the path the whole time, paid the electric a year ahead, labeled the freezer meals like a school teacher labeling cubbies, put instructions in the sewing tin in case I forgot how to thread faith through a needle. These, he tapped the letters, which he'd brought, were the only map I didn't know about. I think she hid them because she knew I'd read them until they took up all the room where living should go. She trusted the dog to tell me when I was ready. He looked at Duke. Duke thumped his tail once, gavel, blessing, done. That evening we ate at his place, roast chicken, too much cinnamon on the peaches because a woman with a clipboard in heaven is still persuasive. June, their daughter, came by with a photo of Helen in front of the library summer program board, eyebrows raised in permanent amusement that the world required so much instruction to be kind. June saw my necklace, the chain I'd used for the ring a week earlier when Everett pressed it into my palm, to keep you company until you know where to put it, and smiled without claiming it back. Mama liked lending better than owning, she said. Even of the things that were hers. We laughed, and it didn't break anything. When I walked home, Duke escorted me halfway like a gentleman. The maple leaves made the street lamp light look like stained glass on the ground. I stood by the spot that used to be a battlefield and now looked like a stitched seam. I touched the new rosemary and thought about all the ways I'd been wrong, not in the fact of being annoyed. I had a right to that, but in the verdict I'd written. Stubborn old man, undisciplined dog, small-town tolerance for mess. The truth had been working back toward daylight while we were busy being right. In the end there was no miracle, just people and a dog doing what they do when grief and love share a fence line, digging, guarding, arguing, giving in, listening through the ground to the instructions someone kind left under the roots. First impressions had made me a judge. A tin of letters made me a witness. Friendship didn't arrive as a Hallmark card. It arrived as a dispute report and a shovel and the decision to keep showing up after you've both said the wrong thing. Months later, tourists drove through town for the fall colors and stopped for pie and asked who kept the rosemary so green, and Rosa would point at our two porches like a single sentence and say, "The librarian," which explained everything without explaining anything. On some evenings when the air goes blue and the crickets start their little factory shift, Duke will wander to the rosemary and rest his chin there, eyes half closed, listening for what we can't hear. Everett will raise his mug in my direction the way men do when they've run out of grudges and discovered better hobbies. I will raise mine back and think, not for the first time, that the hole in my yard was a door and the anger in my voice was just thunder before rain. If you ask me now what happened on Maple Street, I'd tell you we argued about a dog until we learned we were both trying to protect the same thing. I'd tell you I dug for proof and found a marriage. I yelled at a neighbor and met a widower. I wanted a quiet life and found a true one. And I'd tell you that sometimes the ground knows before you do where you're supposed to plant something for the next person to find.